Right, now for all this, I'm joined now by TUT SRC President Keamogetswe Masike. Keamogetswe, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. The Progressive Youth Alliance, the South African Student Congress, and the Young Communist League, all calling for the entire executive of NSFAS to be fired. Why? When the board says, well, we did exactly what boards should do. We identified the corruption. We did the mitigation that was required. And basically ours is largely to manage or to exercise oversight over management. So why should they be fired?
Yeah, good evening, Tabu, and thanks for having us. Yeah, look, our stance is very simple. The board has found the CEO guilty for handpicking some of these fly-by-night companies that we've said that it can't be correct that companies that were just taken from the streets are appointed and are given a big responsibility like this. So we're saying that they must not drag their feet because part and parcel of that, as you might know, that on the first of each month, students are supposed to be getting allowances. Their meal allowances. So, as we speak now, NSFAS has not yet presented a turnaround strategy, on how it is going to deal with this crisis that speaks to the disbursement of allowances of our students. As we speak, our students, they are panicking because, look, the CEO has been found guilty by the board. Second to that, we also believe that the CEO is not the only one who must be held accountable. The CEO is not the only one who must go to jail. We also believe that the chairperson of the board also must be held accountable for some of these shenanigans that have been ongoing at NSFAS. So we believe that we actually calling upon the board to take decisive action, on the recommendations that they've presented to us, that people must be held accountable, those that participated in the bid evaluation committee and presided over some of these procurement processes must be held accountable.
Why the chairperson?
Yeah, we believe that the CEO has been used as a scapegoat, and Mr. Ernest Koza himself is the chairperson of the board. And there's no way that anything can happen at a board level where the chairperson might not be informed about those issues. So we believe that he is also involved because we've also seen that there was a record that was released to the city press where actually the chairperson is saying that the reason why the CEO is suspended, they are pushing a narrative that it must be seen as if NSFAS is also acting upon some of these assertions that we've made in the past. So indeed, that says to us the chairperson is corrupt and also must be held accountable.
Yeah, but this board believes that the chairperson is not implicated in the appointments of the service providers for the direct payment system, saying it's an unrelated issue that was raised on City Press, and currently these allegations that are being brought up are actually not backed by any evidence.
No, there's no way. That's why I was saying that an investigation must be lodged. The investigation must be leveled against the chairperson. Because he's also been dragging his feet. I mean, we've presented some of these issues 6 months back, that we believe that these companies, have been wrongfully appointed by the CEO. And of course, even the CEO came out clearly that post his suspension, his signature was used fraudulently to appoint companies, giving them 20 years lease contract that must deal with the accommodation crisis in the country. So we fail to understand that, but how can the CEO be suspended and then later his electronic signature is used? So it can't be that it's only the CEO that is used as a scapegoat. It can't be that it's the CEO that must go to jail, while the chairperson of the board also, we believe that he knew about some of these tender irregularities that have been happening at NSFAS.
Meanwhile, of course, the NSFAS board chairperson says that as NSFAS and as the board, they are satisfied with the policy changes, including the introduction of the direct payment method, saying the system, yes, has got problems, but it's not the problem in the system as yet, but it's as much rather, but it's a problem in the implementation thereof.
Yes, true. That's correct, because we've said it, that it can't be a business as usual when fly-by-night companies are imposed to us, because we have alluded that orientation processes never took place. These people came in our universities and they ambushed us. They told us that they're going to proceed with this implementation of this process without proper oversight being conducted. So indeed, we do agree that they've rushed this system. They never took many factors into consideration. One, the academic year that is currently on a peak, because we've said it that the academic year is ongoing. Students are about to prepare for exams and tests. And it can't be correct that you want to impose a system big like this, where even some of these companies, when we do our research, they are not even FICA registered. Their experience in the sector is not credible as well. And of course, that said to us, no, indeed, this is criminal injury, and those that have presided in the appointment of these companies must be held accountable. So we do agree with those assertions that, look, by the way, I must also emphasize it, that we've never been against a direct payment idea on the basis that it speaks about the eradication of corruption and all of that. But we're saying that students have been happy using their traditional bank accounts, their Capitex and all of that. Why impose a system like this and deprive students of having, that particular right of choosing which particular bank to use and which particular not bank to use? And then you also want to impose exorbitant charges where students must actually pay a levy to receive those allowances. So that said to us, indeed, these comrades are participating in a criminal syndicate, and these companies that have been appointed are fly-by-night companies, and indeed the minister must also be held accountable, because for the past 6 months, I think we've also been calling for his attention that how can a system like this happen, and he does not want to come to the ground and account for some of these assertions that student leaders across the country are making. So that also gave us an idea that actually even the minister must also be held accountable. And of course that says to us he's incompetent and must also resign as a Minister of Higher Education. Because it can't be correct that whenever the state of higher education is in a state of a crisis, the Minister of Education takes time to respond to some of those issues that affect students across the country.
Tender irregularities findings aside, let's talk about the introduction of the direct payment system. As a student representative body, do you believe that the intentions of this system are noble in ensuring accountability on the student allowances? Because in some instances, it's a blame game. NSFAS says it's the financial institutions. The financial institutions say it's NSFAS. Would a direct payment system address that situation?
I personally believe that we've embraced the idea, because I think I must also emphasize that we're sick and tired of people stealing state money to feed their personal lifestyles. So when the idea was introduced to us, of course we had an appreciation that actually maybe perhaps NSFAS is making efforts in dealing with some of these criminal elements that have been perpetuating there. So look, it says that, because I must also not speak on behalf of other criminals, because we also believe that universities are also implicated in this process. The SIU has came out clearly. A lot of money has been found in institutional coffers, the likes of UJ. The SIU has found a lot of money there that was not sent back to NSFAS. So I think I must also agree that some of the grounds and the facts that NSFAS is presenting to us, we do embrace it, that actually even some of these universities must be held accountable, because that money is money of the poor and the vulnerable, and eligible students must not be deprived of that money. So a direct payment system, of course, we still do agree with it, but we're saying that don't deprive students from receiving that money in their bank accounts, and don't make students pay for that money, because I think where we are today, because of a 12-rand discussion, where even some student leaders sat in these board discussions tables with these criminals, agreeing that students must pay 12 rand. So we fail to understand that, but why must students pay 12 rand on the basis that even this money that they are receiving is not sufficient to address some of their immediate needs in institutions of higher learning.
Yeah.
So we do embrace the idea, but we're saying that don't deprive students their money, don't make them pay for their money.
Yeah.
Give students what's due to theirs. The minister must be held accountable. He must resign no later than tomorrow. And the chairperson of the board as well must be put under investigation.
So do you have solutions for the 4 things that you're raising? One is delays in transference of funds, of which NSFAS says
Yes.
we do not delay. We transfer the funds immediately. 2, the excessive fees that you're saying are being charged, which I suppose your position would be no fees at all should be charged.
Yes.
And 3, the inaccessibility of the service provider. I've heard students saying, well, these guys are actually not on campus. So even when you have problems, you don't know where to find them or where to lodge your complaint. And number 4, the lack of clarity on how these funds should be accessed.
Yes, we do have solutions, and these are permanent solutions. We're saying that our students are using Capitec. Capitec, students have never experienced any problems, number 1, with those banks. And we can't speak on behalf of students when it comes to which banks do they prefer and all of that. So if students are saying that preferably Capitec is user-friendly to us and we're happy, we're saying that those allowances must be redirected to those banks of those students. We can't be discussing a crime that we must benefit from some of these processes because there's a big clientele that is there and we're not getting anything out of it. So we're saying that, number 1, those allowances must be redirected to the bank accounts of students. Second to that, NSFAS must not just appoint people that were taken from the streets in the robots and then bring them as assistants in our campuses to assist the students. Because I can tell you now in good faith that many of the people that these service providers have brought in our campuses are clueless. They can't answer any difficult questions that students are raising. Actually, I must also even emphasize that even the alternative that they've presented, that students can call in order for them to attend to their issues, that landline is not working. So we are failing to understand that, but how can you even present a landline while we're dealing with scores of students who might be having difficulties? I can tell you now, many students have not even received their allowances from February. Seated today in TUT, there are many students who have not received allowances any as February, and no one is held accountable of that. Money has disappeared in these accounts of these fly-by-night companies that have been appointed, and no one is held accountable. So I'm saying that do a proper oversight. Go to each university, check how many students are NSFAS beneficiaries there, and then check which banks are they using, and then go and negotiate with those particular banks to assist those students in receiving their allowances. Don't say that you are removing a third party, and yet indirectly you are introducing another third party, but in a form of a heist. Because I must also emphasize that this is a heist, in particular, on the basis that students are paying to receive those allowances. And this is 47 billion that we're speaking about here. It's not 12 rand. It's a lot of money. It's taxpayers' money. It's money that must be given to eligible students across these universities. And unfortunately, how this system was also introduced, it does not speak to how will these students not face financial and academic exclusion come 2024.
Yeah. Because
I can tell you, many of these students have been defunded in the process.
Yeah.
Many of these students have been stripped off of that particular right or eligibility to receive those allowances. And today, those students are homeless. They don't have any place to sleep because some of these residences that accommodate these students are commodified. Beds are commodified. Students must pay to have access to those beds. So we're saying that this is crime. We're not going to allow it. The minister must hand over his resignation. As in when the Springboks land from France to South Africa tomorrow, I think the minister must also make sure that he hands his resignation over. Because we're not going to agree that the state of our education in South Africa is in a state of a crisis and no one is held accountable.
But why does it seem as though that even the SRC itself is not united in how they want this to proceed? I'll tell you why. UCT Student Representative Council there says that their stance is that there should never be a third-party system. In fact, this rollout of this thing must be completely scrapped. That is UCT, SRC also, they have expressed the same sentiments. The direct payment system must be discontinued. But you've got the South African Union of Student Bodies saying a direct system, yes, must be implemented as long as it's going to be implemented correctly.
Yes, direct if it speaks to the eradication of corruption, if it speaks to eradicating the late payments of students, then we do embrace the idea. And like I'm emphasizing, that we have never had an obsession. I think student leaders must not also have an obsession of who gives our students money and who does not give our students money. I think the only point of their center of focus must be in making sure that students receive money, they're on time, and credible banks are responsible in the disbursement of these allowances. So I'm saying that we are an we are not a corrupt organization that will promote corruption. And that is why I was speaking robustly like this, to say that people must go to jail, people must go to prison. And we're not going to agree that fly-by-night companies that don't have even a financial experience in the financial startup is just given a responsibility like this. So we're saying that if a direct payment system is a solution to curbing corruption, then we're agreeing with that system. But the implementation part of it is the most crucial part. And I don't think if this system was introduced like how it was introduced this year, we're going to experience all of these sporadic protests across the country, where you find student leaders standing up to describe, saying that they never agree that these companies are just given this big responsibility to deal with the disbursement of allowances of their students. So I believe that student leaders have actually done a great job, but we don't believe that Andile Nongogo is the only criminal who must be held accountable. We believe that there are many that have assisted him. The South African Union of Students, SAUS, must also be held accountable, because they also sit in some of these discussion tables where they must advise the minister, they must advise these criminals on how to deal with these issues. And of course, where do they get a framework of how things must be done? They get it from SRC members across these institutions who are dealing with these students on a daily basis. So we believe that a lot of people must go to jail. It's not only Mr. Andile Nongogo that must face jail, but many of these leaders and officials must go to jail.
All right, Keamogetswe, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Keamogetswe Masike, SRC president at TUT.